Hello there. This is Dr. K. Paul Stoller, and the short video you are about to see is based on a peer-reviewed article I wrote titled Sex, Lies, and Trauma. This first part is about something is wrong with men. As a gender, most men suffer in ways women either can't understand or don't care to understand. It is challenging being a man in our unlovely society. More challenging than most know. In our dystopian culture, men are basically disposable and are more socially isolated and lonely than they have ever been. Men will lean on drugs and alcohol as a way to numb their feelings and their pain, but that is a self-destructive path. For decades, our educational system has betrayed boys. The current teaching paradigm created by the Rockefeller Foundation to produce worker bees is tolerable if you are a girl. But if you are a boy, it is torture, and they keep falling farther and farther behind. Female enrollment in colleges is closing in on 70%. Imagine the implications. There has been an anti-male sentiment by educators, especially in the K-12 years, for decades. The CIA-created feminist agenda took hold and overshadowed everything else. Boys were just snips and snails and puppy dogs' tails that have Ritalin deficiencies. Schools became so aggressive at recommending an addictive drug, they could have made the Mexican cartels blush. Feminism sold burnout as liberation. It told women to break the glass ceiling by working over 40 hours a week in a 9-to-5 system designed by and for men where consistency is king. But women are not small men. Their energy, creativity, and productivity ebb and flow with their menstrual cycles. Instead of connecting with their bodies and respecting themselves as women, they are handed birth control pills, which is not a form of liberation, but a form of sedation. Being disconnected from one's feminine biology was not liberation, but a trap. There are now 40,000 men committing suicide every year in the U.S. About 20 veterans a day commit suicide. There is a suicide every 7 minutes. In the first quarter of this century, there have been 1.1 million suicides in the USA. Imagine if women were doing this. There would be ribbons, protests, billboards, telethons, congressional hearings, fundraising concerts, and so on. Clearly, we have failed to address these issues. Heck, we don't even talk about them. And it is a reflection of our sick society. Men need to have a purpose, to feel that they are useful. But for many young men and very old men, they find themselves lost, confused, and desperate. The fact that we don't care to find a place and a purpose for these men is a tragedy. But the word tragedy makes it sound like this is some kind of accident. This is not an accident. This is willful blindness. And this information is kept from the general public because it's not politically convenient. Have you ever been to Camden, New Jersey? It looks like a post-apocalyptic movie set, and has looked that way for a good 70 years. Nothing is done. No one seems to care. We are truly a mentally and spiritually ill society, for we treat men like New Jersey treats Camden. Being more specific. Pre-1970, it was possible for a one-income family to purchase a house in the United States. That is rarely possible now. Many young men are saddled with student debt as well, making them feel less able to start a family. The increase of women in the workforce means the money they are earning is often higher than many men, and women do not date down as a rule, leaving a lot of lonely young men out there. In 1970, married couples made up 71% of U.S. households, but by 2022, that had dropped to 47%. In 1962, 90% of all 30-year-olds were married. but by 2019, that had dropped to 51%. These numbers point to a societal collapse. And this isn't just in the West. No one is getting married in China, only about 6 million pairs a year, and the birth rate is crashing. Why? Economic hardship and a very pessimistic outlook for the future. But there are always other reasons. What if the Neolithic Revolution wasn't the start of human civilization, but a reboot? We rise, we fall, we forget. It is part of the game that is played out on our planet. But where are we today on this timeline? Have we already sown the seeds of our own demise? Something pernicious has happened to young men. They were disproportionately affected, or should I say their brains, by the explosion of vaccines required to go to school, especially the ones given between 1989 and 2003, which were loaded with mercury, which makes up half of the adjuvant called thimerosal. Mercury impacts males more than females because testosterone increases mercury toxicity. So, the first red flag I noticed about 25 years ago were the math scores of male students dropping like a lead balloon on one end of the spectrum, and the autism rate exploding on the other end. When I went to medical school in the 70s, the autism rate was 1 in 10,000. Now it is more like 1 in 12, boys in California. In 2004, I was invited to address a congressional committee on the matter, and off the record I was told, by a government official, that everyone in the upper echelons of government who wanted to know whether vaccines cause autism already knew that they did, but would do nothing about it. In fact, they were doing everything to obfuscate the issue to protect the government from liability. None of the vaccines were safety tested, and certainly not in combination, but vaccines became the sacred cow of the medical cartel, and you see where that got us during COVID. It allowed a democide to take place, the full impact of which has yet to be felt. The medical cartel is the deep state of conventional medicine. Let me point out that autism is a vaccine encephalopathy. And just because someone doesn't have full-blown autism doesn't mean their brains got past that process unharmed. So, we have 2 generations of children, first being poisoned by mercury, and now aluminum. Even the so-called trace mercury vaccines, and we just take pharma's word that the mercury is reduced, is still at 2,000 parts per billion. The EPA labels 200 parts per billion hazardous waste. All of us are being exposed to the nano-aluminum being sprayed on us from the biggest environmental threat of our time, the climate engineering weapons they are using. It is killing our soils and killing our trees. No trees, no bees, no humans. Behind the scenes, a death cult is still doing their thing, and yet we don't talk about it. Oh, and let's make sure the bees die off with the unrestricted use of neonicotinoid pesticides, which is still the practice in the USA. Buying houses and starting a family are the pistons of a large part of the economic engine of the USA. What happens when the timing of those pistons goes so far off that the engine stops because we have poisoned our children while making it financially difficult to even think about buying a house or starting a family? Most don't want to believe there has been a multi-decade plot to collapse Western society, especially its men, especially in the USA. But denial has a short shelf life. End of part 1.